out into the universe. Good morning and happy Indigenous Day to everyone. It's a special day indeed. I often think about the ancestors who prayed for us to have healthy lives and to grow old, in a good way. And I know that ceremonial prayers address like cognitive decision making, request our guidance through life, and to assist us in the best ways. So, to me, prayers are really proactive. And while life is continuously changing, making mindful changes is really important when it comes to our lifestyle, our diet, our behavior, exercising, things that can help us live longer and be disease free. The Lasting Indigenous Family Enrichment Program, we hope to help people recognize healthy practices and how to impact the lives of whole families, from the babies up to the grandparents. And with culture as our foundation for the programming, it is our hope that individuals will connect with their own past, their cultural teachings, things they've heard from relatives, and come and share them with other program participants. When that happens, it's so amazing, and it's really beautiful and probably even more meaningful. We are under the umbrella of Native Americans for Community Action, the Lasting Indigenous Family Enrichment Program. We come from a funding program under the Center for Disease Control. I say that because it's very important. These are federal dollars that we're spending and have the opportunity to create programming for community members. And we take it very seriously. We really, the additional part of that is that it's the objectives from CDC are that we use tribal practices. How awesome is that, right? We get to do our own tribal ways, igniting and recognizing some of our tribal practices, remembering, renewing them. And even as far as if we don't understand some of the practices, the program can educate, and as well as community participation, peer-to-peer education, which is really a big part of it. And we ask community to help us in our programming. Tell us what your needs are as far as that cultural programming portion, because that's really important, is that we connect with the community and that you share with us what you need, and then that directs our planning, our activities with you. So Center for Disease Control recognize that there's high incidence and high prevalence, and we all know, we all have family members who are diabetic. There's people who have chronic heart disease. There's people who have high blood pressure and other chronic diseases that we go to the health center and we get pills for these. But yet we have our own medicinal ways, our own way of healing ourselves, not to mention our own innate desire to be healthy and to be well and to be balanced. Again, let me reflect on those prayers that are often said by, not only our ancestors for us, but prayers that are said in ceremony, prayers that were said this morning, prayers that are said all over in ceremony to live a long, healthy life. And so when CDC was going around trying to find ways to reduce these prevalencies, these diseases in Indian country, it was a group of our own elders who talked with the bigwigs, the medical doctors of CDC, and said, quit bringing us pills. Let us begin to heal ourselves in our own way. And with good blessings, good thoughts, somebody in that high office heard the words and took it to heart, where they developed appropriations and fundings to go out to people in Indian country to begin to do tribal practices to help decrease those chronic diseases. There's 38 sites in Indian country all the way across Turtle Island, like our program, that are doing similar things to increase health and well-being of the people. here in Arizona, I believe there's like 5 different agencies, tribal and non-tribal agencies, that are being funded to promote health and wellness and disease prevention. So we're really thankful that we were able to create the grant proposal and be accepted and approved by CDC to go forth and work within the community with the community to do activities that are cultural, that are traditional, that are meaningful to our people. And so we are here today to present what we have to offer you, what we have to offer the community. We hope that this presentation will inspire you to join us, inspire you to share our activities and events when you see them on our social medias. And we NACA does have Facebook, we have Twitter, we have Instagram, and we have web pages. And Sean Ray will tell you more about that. Sean Ray Begay is the health educator. She can introduce herself, and I'm sorry I took off without introducing myself. My name is Carrie Dallas. I am Navajo and Lakota from my mother, and my father is Hopi and Pima. I'm a quarter breed, a product of the Indian Education Program when kids were taken from their homes and sent to boarding schools. So my grandparents were full-bloods who met one another, and that's how I became a quarter breed. But I respect and I recognize each one's individual culture and traditions, and I like to find the underlying common practices, and there's numerous. So again, my name is Carrie Dallas. On the screen, you see our little group. Next to me is Carol. We call her Fritz. She's an amazing woman who is the volunteer manager. Let me emphasize the volunteer part. She volunteers her time, like daily, at the Colton Garden as someone who manages that community garden. It's a beautiful place just below the San Francisco Peaks. And there you see in the picture below, Sean Ray Begay, the health educator, with the peaks below us, behind her. And it's just so serene, so calming, and just a great place for her to go. She talks about how she feels rewarded every day she goes there. And then Kai Begay, we brought him on through the summer as our food sustainability resource worker. He's been tremendous help, and I wish we had more funding to keep him on, but with the growing season coming to a close, we probably won't open up that until the spring again. So that's our little group. Next slide. So we had all this technical jargon that we had here to tell you what the LIFE program was, but being that, we just want to connect with people, I kind of changed the wording. I mean, not change the wording, but the meaning is still the same, that the LIFE program respectfully engages holistic, tribal, and contemporary practices to provide community with an array of presentations, activities, and events which sustain Indigenous culture, which ignites the intergenerational connection and sharing healthy practices while strengthening our sense of belonging. And this year, the program, and next year, Indigenous gardening is our focus. As you might know or may not know, across Indian country with COVID and just other things, the recognition of gardening, the rewards of going back to our traditional practice of touching the earth, breathing the air, feeling the sun and the warmth, and growing foods like this. Sean Ray will describe further on in the presentation. The Indigenous gardening, we're sharing and practicing traditional foodways, and it's amazing. Establishing healthy and active lifestyles to help reduce the prevalence of diabetes and other chronic diseases like I've been talking about. So like I was mentioning, we really go to community to ask, their input, their thoughts, their feelings, and their needs. This chart shows exactly that. IG is Indigenous gardening, and we put on the top there the question, how does Indigenous gardening impact health? how does indigenous gardening connect with culture? And we'll start on the right side going down. So under culture, you see somebody said family connection. And how many of you can relate that when you're out gardening, in the field, in gardens, if you've had that experience, how it is a family activity. And in that, we are learning along with our other cultural practices, nurturing. And during those times, I remember being a child and working in my dad's fields. You'd hear people singing, hear people telling stories. And so it was really times of that are still in my memory. And if I hate to just talk about myself, but I'm using myself for an example. And then somebody mentioned that it also helps, Indigenous gardening helps them with self-love. I'm not sure what they meant with that, but we could probably guess what their meaning was. Another family member, another participant talked when her children were standing there and we were looking at the corn, and she was saying that she remembered the cornfields, and how the family would be all there, and the older people, members of her family, would be collecting pollen. And then she turned around and she said, kind of in a sad way, my children don't even know what that is. They've never done something like that. And that gave us a thought that, maybe we can do that activity. Maybe we can collect pollen. And so this coming year, we hope to have at least, a lot of corn planted to grow to be able to collect the pollen. And then on the health side, people were talking about food sovereignty. And you hear these terms quite a bit throughout Indian country in the indigenous gardening activities and programs, and how it also teaches the cycle of life from seed to, growth to harvest to, how you take care of it when it goes to sleep. And somebody was really strong at the one point where they said there's no GMO in garden food, and that is so true. The garden food is so tasty, and you don't have any chemicals on there. It's very organic. And not only that, it provides an avenue for exercise, bending, pulling, hoeing, and watering, all those different things, and that it's a way of saving money or making money. So we felt like community was really in tune to the idea of doing indigenous gardening, and we went with it. And then we asked a few more questions of different community members, and one of the questions we asked is, why is indigenous gardening important to our community? And you can see on the screen here are a couple of the responses that we received. Again, this is community feedback, and that you connect with the dirt, the growing cycle, the sun and water. All of these have medicines and lessons to teach us. That is so powerful. I really like that feedback, and that it teaches us to honor the cycle of life. The main importance is food sustainability. I believe the pandemic was a rude awakening for us to learn self-sufficiency. It teaches us about the old ways, traditions, ceremonies, and uses of plants. And then we also asked, there was 3 questions we asked. How can indigenous gardening help our community? Community response was, it brings generations together and opens connections and discussion. Families, parents working alongside their children to plant. And the sunlight provides vitamin D, which helps immunity. That the physical activity in gardening provides functional and varied types of movement, and that gardening can also improve our eating and our diet. And then the last question that we asked them was, why is sharing traditional practices and concepts important to you? One person remarked that many urban Native Americans experience a sense of cultural loss, that urban gardening with indigenous values and mentorship can help. Traditional practices need to be shared with youth so they don't disappear, and that these teachings are holistic, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, to help us to live a good life. Reading these responses, trying to devise the programming, it makes me feel like that our community really understands, and that they know within their own sense, within their own being, how planting is something that we are proud to share and proud to present throughout the year. Shanri will introduce herself, and then she'll go on and describe our activities. Thank you.
Ya'ata shi'e Shanri bige yinishya, ta chitni nishli, tori chitni bashishchin, ton optum dashache, ashihin dashanella. Good morning, my name is Shanri Bigay. My tribes are Tana Optum and Dina. I'm originally from Shanto, Arizona, and I've lived in Flagstaff for about 17 years. So I was really interested in working with Carrie on this project because her vision is guided by Indigenous teachings and in meeting the community where they are. We're not growing food for market, we're growing food for education. And so we offer workshops for new gardeners, cultural experiences for the Indigenous community, and space for anyone who holds knowledge to share it with their Indigenous neighbors. We're also trying to build long-term partnerships with the gardens that we grow at so that Indigenous space will continue to be held there and hopefully grow there. So I'll talk more about how we did that in coming slides. First, I want to show you our two garden sites. The first one is at the Colton Community Garden, which is located on the Museum of Northern Arizona campus. It's right next door to the Peak Senior Living Community. And as you can see, it has a beautiful view of the Sacred Mountain. So pictured here is the largest gardening plot at the Colton Garden, known as North 40, and it's dedicated to Indigenous crops. So our NACA group helped plant and take care of this garden. We specifically planted the squash and beans in this garden. We also created a little hidden nook at the end of this gourd tunnel pictured here, where we planted 3 sisters crops, corn, beans, and squash, and some root veggies and herbs. Next year, we'll be dedicating this space to medicinal plants like echinacea, osha root, and tea. At the Colton Garden, we have weekly volunteer workdays where we take care of our plants as well as the garden at large. Likewise, on the days that we're not able to be there, other volunteers look after our plants. So even though the Colton Garden is on the outskirts of town, it is actually doable for our participants to grow plants there since they only have to come out every so often. Carrie and I love the Colton Garden because there is this established network of support there. So our next garden site is at the Isabel Street Community Garden, which is located in Sunnyside. It's right next to the skate park and just down the street from Camino High School. Isabel Garden is centrally located, and if you live in Sunnyside, it's walking distance. We have 4 beds here, and perhaps we're going to have more beds next year. The garden culture at Isabel is more individualized, so NACA only takes care of the NACA plots. But within the NACA plots, we think of them as community plots for our Indigenous gardening participants. So the idea is we plant our crops together, take care of them together, and we'll share the harvest together. This year we grew corn, beans, squash, gourds, tomatoes, leafy greens, and root vegetables here. So now I want to share some of our takeaways from our first year to give you some ideas and resources for gardening in Flagstaff. We purchased our Isabel plots with Terra Birds. If you're interested, you can also purchase garden plots at Terra Birds. Their plots are $65 for the year, and it includes water, soil, and the use of essential tools. They have several community garden sites around town, and I believe the Isabel site where we were had the most openings this past year. But say you want to garden at home, you will want to find out what microclimate you're in. Flagstaff is a unique town because the temperature and wind exposure varies from neighborhood to neighborhood. And this makes a difference when choosing crops. So we can actually help you figure out your microclimate, or you can always consult with the Cooperative Extension Office. What to plant? We made a point of choosing heirloom seeds, which are open pollinated seeds, meaning that they were pollinated by birds, insects, or wind, and not by human means. Heirloom seeds are passed down from generation to generation, and they often come with stories. Within the category of heirloom seeds, we looked for varieties that were quick to mature, 90 days or less, and had some tolerance to frost. Flagstaff has a short growing season, so you want something that will be ready to harvest before it gets too cold. There are also many seed varieties that are adapted to our high elevation and arid conditions. So Native Seed Search is a great source for heirloom seeds. That's where we got all of our seeds. If you go to their website, you can actually filter seeds by culture that they came from, elevation, moisture conditions, and length of growing time. Native Seed Search also offers Native Americans 10 free seed packets a year, and then an additional 20 seed packets for 50% off. We purchased from them several varieties of Hopi and Navajo corn, beans, and squash. So they're awesome. I really encourage you to take a look at their website, and if you're interested in gardening, get some seeds from them. Another local free source of seeds is the Grow Flagstaff Seed Library, located at the Cooperative Extension Office. These are seeds that have been collected by local gardeners due to their success. So you will find seeds here that are adapted very specifically to Flagstaff. They only ask that when you take seeds from here that you save the seeds from the plants that you grow and then bring back at least as much as you took. So Flagstaff has a short growing season. Our average last frost is June 11th. Generally, you want to wait to plant 3 sisters crops, corn, beans, and squash, outdoors until after the last frost. Then our average first fall frost is September 23rd. This year, our first frost actually came around September 11th, and it killed a lot of our more sensitive plants. So this is the reasoning for choosing your seeds carefully, choosing seeds that will mature quickly and that might be cold tolerant. There are also ways to extend the growing season, including covering crops with hoop houses to keep them warm. And you can start seeds indoors, like leafy greens and tomatoes. Flagstaff has a diversity of soils, which are not always nutrient rich. What we recommend is making a raised bed so that you can build the best soil for growing. You'd be surprised what materials you can make a raised bed out of. Using found or recycled material, you can make a bed for little to no money. And there's a demonstration area at the Colton Community Garden where you can actually see a variety of beds made out of found materials. That will give you some ideas. Looks like someone took control. Just a sec. Oh, my PowerPoint went away. Let me try and share my screen again. Okay. So I would also recommend making a lasagna bed to fill your raised bed. The lasagna bed method is a way of layering different types of organic materials such as manure, compost, dry leaves, and soil, so that you have a living soil full of microbes and earthworms and different things that will help feed your plants for multiple years. So when planting seeds, there are songs and ceremonies that go along with that. The act of putting seeds in the ground has a lot of significance and specific traditions that can vary from family to family and culture to culture. But it's a great opportunity for community to share with each other, especially with youth, because it's hands-on, it's outdoors, and it's fun. So I encourage you all to share your stories of planting with the young people in your life and to come join us next spring. As far as caring for plants, Flagstaff has some unique challenges. We talked about the cold, but there are also really hot days. If you are growing plants that are not particularly adapted for the desert, they will need some protection from the sun and more water in the hottest months. We also have gophers, deer, and rabbits that can eat your food. So we found that the best thing for that is physical barriers like fencing. We even stapled wire mesh to the bottom of some of our raised beds to prevent the prairie dogs from digging up into the beds from underneath. And the best weed control we found is just manually pulling it. It's tedious, but it's organic, chemical-free, and it's good physical activity. And in a community garden space, you'll have a lot of help weeding. So just like planting, harvesting comes with cultural activities and is an opportunity to share your teachings with the youth. You want to make sure you save the seeds from the best fruit and veggies so that you have those seeds to grow from next year. It's not enough to grow the food, you actually have to eat it. These foods that our ancestors ate are often very healthy for us because they're plant-based, nutrient-dense, and they don't include refined sugars, unhealthy fats, or refined grains. Finally, you can continue to grow crops in the winter. In Flagstaff, you can plant garlic bulbs, fruit trees, seeds, strawberry seeds, and perennial herbs in the fall. And the months of moist cold will actually help these seeds germinate so that they come up in the spring. So our final words of wisdom from this year are that it's important to honor the life cycle. The life cycle is just like growing food, and in the end of the cycle, the end of the life cycle is often overlooked. So we donated. Oh, I'm hearing an echo. I don't know what that's about. So we donated most of our crops this year to the Joe C. Montoya Food Center, and they distributed our crops to local seniors. The picture below on the bottom shows them distributing it in sort of a drive-by situation. They also prepared the crops into little meals that they distributed via the Meals on Wheels program or at the Joe C. Montoya site for elders who don't particularly cook at home. So we're really proud of that partnership. So what programming do we actually offer? Besides inviting community out to the garden to work, we have hosted many workshops. This past year, they were all virtual due to COVID, but the silver lining is that they were recorded and you can still view them. So we had Tyrone Thompson share agricultural workshops from a Diné perspective, and Lillian Hill share wild plant information from a Hopi perspective. We've done programming on traditional and herbal medicine. Carrie and I felt it was important to share some medicinal knowledge in this pandemic era so that our people have more tools to take care of themselves and their health. Indigenous people already know this, but successful gardening requires a knowledge of how the natural world works. So we offered some science-based education on pollinators and native species. Flagstaff is a desert, and so we take water stewardship seriously. We had a rainwater workshop, and we're putting that knowledge into practice by setting up a rainwater system at the Colton Garden. So pictured here is our intern, Kai Begay, as he is setting up gutters on this building to collect water in that big tank next to him. Just a note, if you're interested in getting your own rainwater barrel, the City of Flagstaff has a program to help get you a free barrel if you're interested. Again, the food grown from the earth is the most nutritious, and traditional crops come with stories. So we have offered several traditional food classes, and we have recipes, and we encourage you to seek out your own family recipes and perhaps share them with us. Life program is also a diabetes prevention program, and so we offered physical fitness support. During COVID, we held 2 virtual fitness challenges. Many families participated together, and they told us that they really enjoyed spending the time outdoors together. So recordings of these presentations can be found by visiting nakainc.org/life, or by visiting the Native Americans for Community Action's homepage and looking for the YouTube link near the top of the page. So we have put to bed for the winter, but our programming is not over. On October 27th, we will show you how to build a greenhouse for starting seeds. In November, NACA has a multitude of Native American Heritage Month events. Later this winter, we'll have a storytelling event. We'll be offering more support for physical fitness. The specifics of that depend on COVID, but we will be offering fitness classes for families. We continue to offer classes on how to use Indigenous foods and medicinal plants, and we invite you to start all over with us in growing these crops next spring. One last thing we did this fall was plant garlic. So in the spring, we'll be digging them up and learning how to braid, store, and use garlic. So to stay updated on all these upcoming events, please follow Native Americans for Community Action on Facebook. And that is all I have to say. Thank you. I'll give the floor back to Claire. I'll give the floor back to Carrie.
Wow. Thank you, Shanre. Great presentation on all the work that we get to do this summer with community, or without community, but we shared everything virtually as much as we could. It was March 19th, we were directed to go home from our offices, and we've been just in recent time, we came back to working at the office. And so we had to be innovative and still find ways to complete our objectives for the funding and create activities, and virtually was the only way we could go. And thankfully, Shanre was really technical savvy and able to help us create these virtual presentations that you can find on the website. So some important things that I'd like to share with you are that garden food has no, I was informed that the sugars, the fructose, all these other dangerous sugars, it's not in organic food. Like the fiber from kale and celery, all those vegetables that have string, that is really good. The fiber to help us with our digestive system, and our digestive system is really important in staying healthy and well. Unlike the cultivated lettuce that you buy in the grocery stores that come from places where it's that's the only thing that they plant. So it's a microcropping, and that in that microcropping, I'm told that the soil is like really depleted of the vitamins and minerals. So store-bought vegetables are have a lot less vitamins and minerals and nutrients in them than the um, garden vegetables and fruits that we produce. We live in a world of processed foods. We eat too many cheap and simple carbs, and we have lives that are too sedentary. When you think about our ancestors who didn't have grocery stores and actually worked in the gardens, walked to gather, walked or did what they needed to hunt, how active they were, and they were lean, they were physically fit. And back then, how many, I'm sure science could tell, what kind of diseases, if probably minimal diseases there were back then. Diabetes for sure wasn't as high as it is now. And so I think about these elders, when it comes to snacking too, the ancient ones, when their food depended on scheduling, depended on gathering enough to last through the winter, storing through the winter, was there such things as snacking? Those and like the donuts, the different types of snacking that we do throughout the day really adds the calories and helps us to be unhealthy. So if we begin to again think about and remembering how our ancestors and remembering our tribal practices, remembering our tribal culture, those things are meaningful to our health and wellness, just like the prayers that are said to live healthy lives and to grow to old age. It's something that's simple to do, but we don't do it. Um, Telling people to eat right and to exercise is just not enough. So thankfully, the program allows us to share, allows us to demonstrate, allows us to bring in cultural experts, cultural people, as well as nutrient dietitians, people who help us with other things. And the more people that we bring in, the better for the programming for community, I feel like. Because the more voices that are saying the same thing, it creates that bonding, it creates that strength, and it enables our community members to really come to some sort of comprehension and understanding of how important it is, not just for self, but for family, for generations. Like if and there's that thought that diabetes is, I've heard this, that they people will say that diabetes is hereditary. You know what? We can change that. We can change that by changing our food. We could change it by our practices. And so, it's really important that we do hands-on, like Sean Ray was talking about, that we do hands-on with people, sharing the ideas and demonstrate. So we really, really, really want people to come and to join us, to share with us, and not to forget also that it's so stress relieving. The holistic practice of gardening is amazing. It impacts your spirit, it impacts your emotion, definitely impacts your physical well-being, and as well as your emotional well-being. One day I was at the garden watering after a really long day of meetings and office work, and I was watering. I was like, oh, I need to hurry up and water. I need to get back and get whatever done. Then all of a sudden I found myself just looking up into the sky, looking at the clouds with no thoughts that had just kind of ran off of me as I was watering the crops there. And that realization was like profound to me, how just being there with the water, the earth, the air, and the crops, and the energy from the sun, how that helped me, how that helped my spirit and that emotion, that moment. And I got a smile, and I was able to go home and do what I needed to do. So so the one cultural practice that I keep talking about is the starting it off with good intention through prayer. So why can't we do the same thing with food and exercise? Let us begin to start our days by eating healthier and also with exercise. that the other thought is that it's never, never, never too late to start healthy practices, to eating right, to learning about it, and remembering, more importantly, remembering what our ancestors left for us. They left us these life ways. You see on the cultural iceberg, the part that we see, that we most of the world sees, is the language, the folklore, the dress, the literature, the fine arts, the festivals and the holidays and the food. But below that, you know, I when I first seen this iceberg, I really hit home with me, and I like the image, so I share it a lot. So the core values over here on the side of the iceberg underneath the water where you can see it are core values that are relative to living a good life, that are connected to indigenous gardening. We've gotten to hear some of those values from our participants, from some of our presenters, and a lot of the times it's really heartfelt. They share with us things about, like, running. Running is a prayer. You know, running isn't something that, well, today it's like running. How many marathons can you run? How many medals can you see? Our people, young lady who was in our running program, who represented our youth, Indigenous youth in games in Australia, who came back, who had medaled over there and came back and told us how our presentation on the spirituality of running as being a prayer, really helped her when she got to that point where she was feeling tired, and that she just remembered the lessons, and then she took off, and she said that it felt really good. And just some of the other things that we don't see above the water, you know, the concept of cleanliness and humor. Oh my gosh, you know, we have a good time at the gardens. The pride. Oh, when we first, they were able to harvest, we harvested one day 181 pounds of squash, and that was a great feeling. And to be able to share it with the elders is really brought a lot of happiness and pride to us. And so all those things, you know, family values, competitiveness, I don't know, you know, the childbearing, or the competitive with the little rodents in our garden. Just kidding. Little guys, the birds, you know, all those things, you know, but we live with them, you know, we understand that they need to eat too. So, you know, that relationship and stuff, and manners, you know, how we relate to our environment, our plant relatives, to understanding the importance of water, and as well as giving thanks that the sun empowers our food, and as well as the vitamin D it gives us for our immunities, like one of the community members said. So if we learn to love healthy food instead of sugar, white flour, and carbs, and if we move more, that would be fulfilling the prayers of our ancestors. And I can't help but think about what I heard the other day. I like listening, I like learning from other people. Somebody talked about innate intelligence, in that our body wants to heal and it wants to return to balance. So innately, we want to be healthy. Innately, we want to do things to help our body. I think that we really need to listen to us. You know, our innate thoughts, or conscious and unconscious. Our minds, you know, can help us. You know, I remember somebody sharing a prayer with me to say, in that, you know, help me to think. And so help me to be cognitive and to think about the foods I eat, the you know, activities I do throughout the day, and I pray that for all. And so we just want to thank you for letting us share the LIFE program, Lasting Indigenous Family Enrichment. And like the little diagram there says, sharing Indigenous tribal practices is rewarding, and learning from each other is a blessing. So, Heha Asquali and Pila Maye, thank you so much for this time. And the city, we are appreciative that you recognized Indigenous Day today. It reminds me of, as a child growing up, Grandma would always pull out her Samsonite suitcase, her red Samsonite suitcase, and we knew what was in there, treasures. Of course, we never got into it, but in there were treasures of her jewelry that we would get to choose to wear for Indian Day, a celebration, and everybody would be dressed up in their Indigenous Day clothing, Indigenous clothing. So I look at this day favorably. We look at this day as a great day, and we just really are thankful for those that joined us today. So again, if you want any more information about the LIFE program, about NACA in general, NACA website, NACA Facebook, please visit all those social medias, and feel free to contact us anytime if you have questions. On the screen, you could see our email, Shawnre Begay, our SMBegay at NACAinc.org, and myself is cdallas at NACAinc.org. And then our main office number is 928-526-2968, and you can ask for the LIFE program. We're located at 2717 North Steves Boulevard. We've been here for a while, and I'm not sure how, but it's the white building, the Pueblo building, I think that's what it's called. But again, look for us on social media. And we wish you a great day. Hope you enjoyed this presentation. Thank you, Rose.
You're welcome, Carrie. I really appreciate all the great information that you have. It's just so good to hear your voice and just the importance of things that you're teaching our people and the community. And it's just something that we all just need to be reminded of, and also to get our affirmations on some of the things that we're doing already in with some people who have taken on those roles of getting back to what our ancestors used to do, what our ancestors believed in. And so I so appreciate the two of you for being here. We do have just a few minutes, and if somebody wanted to ask a question, that's okay. We do have another session at 11, and I just don't want anybody to be late. So, but you can always reach out to Carrie and to Shawnre, and ask those questions as well. So I appreciate it. You can always use the chat section, or you can raise your hand. Other than that, if there's no questions, then we can go ahead and log off and just say have a great day, everybody.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.
We'll see you at the next one.